In the letter to the Romans, Paul writes, "If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." As Scripture says, anyone who believes in him will never be put to shame. For there is no difference between Jew and Gentile. The same Lord is Lord of all and richly blesses all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, "How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news." Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. Life begins very small. It starts with a few cells, and then it grows up and becomes bigger and bigger. It takes a lot of time. When you're a child, it seems endless. The time until the holidays, the time until your birthday, until Christmas. When you're older, it seems very different. Then you look back and ask yourself, where have all the years gone? And you think back, and you look back at what started out small and what has become of it. But do you know what? You are still growing. Your life experience and your treasure of memories, growing older and growing old too, is growing. It never stops, and that is good. Talking also begins very small. Actually, it starts with hearing. Just like when you were little, you heard how others spoke to you, and then you began to repeat words, and then eventually whole sentences. And you learned to say I and you and yes and no. Speaking comes from listening. And a relationship to life also comes from that. How others have talked to you has shaped how you see life. A child who grows up with harsh words can sometimes become harsh himself. A child who is ignored all the time might learn, I do not deserve it. A child who is loved can give love. Words shape life, much more than we realize. Because words build relationship. That which is there between people, that which sustains. So much comes from words. Words become action, and action becomes life. But all speaking begins with listening. Last week, one of the confirmants stood next to me and checked to see who of us was taller. I am taller, for now, because in 7 or 8 weeks, it can all look completely different. At that age, you grow so incredibly. You grow out of so many things, out of trousers and shoes, out of being a child in general, and you grow into something new, into youth and becoming an adult. You grow into new responsibilities and big decisions, into an old and yet new self, and sometimes also into a changed faith. Faith too begins small, and it also begins with listening. Do you remember who told you about faith? Your parents are one of them? Or your grandmother? And do you remember the situations in which that happens? In the evening at the side of the bed before falling asleep, or at prayer before dinner, or when someone told you or read you the stories of the Bible? None of us would have grown into faith if someone hadn't told us about it. Faith comes from hearing the message, Paul writes. You heard it again and again. That takes time. And then something grew, slowly. That also took time. And it never stops, because none of us already knows everything about faith. We need the exchange with others. Those who think that they already know everything, they also think they are always right. But faith is not about being always right, but about listening and being amazed. Faith comes from hearing the message, writes Paul, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. Others have told us about faith at some point, and someone has told them about it, and they in turn have also been told about it, and so on. If you go all the way back, you end up with Jesus and his disciples. As he tells them, tell others, and they did. And then it went on and on, from Jesus to you. That's how you are connected to Jesus. And so am I. We are related through a few hundred branches of faith, a very big family. Our faith has a long history. It never starts with ourselves, but it becomes new with ourselves. Because faith is not a dead piece of wood like a baton that is passed down until we reach the kingdom of heaven. Faith is more like a living tree that grows anew in each and every one of us. New and always a little bit different, because every life is different. When I think back, I realize those who have told me about faith have shared what is important to them personally. And that is exactly why I believed them, because I realized faith is not any story, but it is their own personal story. Paul often expressed things in a terribly complicated way, but sometimes also very simply. Like here, when he tells us how it is with faith, that exactly two things belong to it: to have faith and to talk about faith. That doesn't sound so easy, but let there be no misunderstanding. God is a friend of the imperfect, the broken and the half-finished. That's exactly what he makes something out of. Out of half-finished life stories, out of broken ideas, out of imperfect faith. If you think your faith is small, then tell how it holds you up. If you think I'm sometimes not at all sure, then tell how God met you in that unsureness. If you think sometimes I don't know what to do anymore, then tell about the one who knows. Start small. Everything in the world starts small. Your life and your talking and also your faith. But you know what? Your faith is no longer small. It has long been bigger than you. So big that it can carry you. So big that it can carry others. Because it comes from God himself. Because you are connected to Jesus. And that is all you need. Amen.